Welcome, you're watching Vox News, your daily evening news with Rita Kamkumo. Our headlines today: protests continue across the United States and beyond following the death of George Floyd at the hands of police officers. Murder-accused Lesotho's former First Lady, Messiah Tabani, has officially left the country alongside her husband, Thomas Tabani. Zimbabwean romantic comedy Cook-Off launches on Netflix this Monday, a major first for the country. Our top story today: street protests continue in various cities of the United States following the shocking death of 46-year-old African-American George Floyd on the streets of Minneapolis on the 25th of May at the hands of several police officers. The outrageous death of the peace activist, caught on video by some bystanders, triggered civil unrest throughout the country. Since last week, protesters have been denouncing police brutality against African Americans and demanding that all officers involved in Mr. Floyd's death be charged. In response to protests, Washington has called in the National Guard and imposed curfews, but protests continue.
Really hoping that justice is served and that the people that are responsible are held accountable and that I don't have to do this again. I don't want to be here, but I'm here. And I'm willing to fight, and I hope more people are as well.
We're showing everybody how oppressed we are.
And how tired we are.
And how tired of this we are.
As a nation, we're tired. That's why it's everywhere. We're tired of the You can't keep having everyone down the way that you do. Right. Power is not that strong, and you're about to find out.
My reason for being out here is supporting the movement. The egregious, the horrible murder that has not been only happening this past week, but for centuries on end. It must stop.
Tell their stories, say all their names. There's been too many deaths. George Floyd just put a cherry on top of it. This is it. We are done. There are too many stories and we're sick of it. It's not just them, it's all of them. Say their stories, say their names. We are sick and tired of this injustice in our systems, in all of our systems.
We just knew we couldn't sit at home, so even despite the pandemic and everything is going on, we had to come out here and we had to show that we were willing to stand up and fight for what we deserve.
A lot of people are trying to change the subject and focus on the riots, but what me specifically and a lot of these people are saying, we don't want to burn our city down. This is our home. We want to build it up. And there's a lot of police officers here in Detroit who grew up here, who have nephews and nieces here, and they don't want to see the city burn down as well.
Us African Americans or any minorities are tired of being oppressed and dealing with racism. There's a difference when you deal with racism versus hearing about it. We live it, and other people just hear about it. So, it's not a thing where it's just inclined, it's just now being built. This racism level has been like this whole time, so we're fed up.
Derek Chauvin, the police officer who knelt on Floyd's neck for almost 9 minutes, was arrested on Friday on charges of third-degree murder and manslaughter. He was moved on Sunday night to Oak Park Heights Prison in Minnesota, one of the United States' most secure prisons, where he awaits his first court date. The three other former police officers who participated in Mr. Floyd's arrest and helped their colleague pin him to the ground remain under investigation. Many sports personalities took a stand and denounced racism following George Floyd's murder. In the footsteps of Colin Kaepernick, LeBron James or Magic Johnson, former NBA basketball superstar Michael Jordan denounced in a statement the rooted racism in the United States while sharing his sadness, suffering and anger over George Floyd's death. Jordan called for peaceful protests and justice to be served. Tennis player Serena Williams posted videos on social media expressing her emotion and denouncing racism. Her colleague Coco Gauff also took to social media to expose police brutality towards African Americans, while French footballer Marcus Thuram took a knee on the field on Sunday after scoring a goal. Demonstrations against the brutal killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis while in police custody spread outside the United States and reached Britain. Hundreds of protesters, including Black Lives Matter activists, gathered in central London on Sunday to protest against Floyd's death. Demonstrations started in Trafalgar Square before moving to the United States Embassy in London in solidarity with American protesters. In Lesotho, former Prime Minister Tom Tabani and his wife, former First Lady Messiah Tabani, have both left the kingdom for an undetermined period. Police reported on Saturday that Thomas Tabani went to South Africa for medical care, accompanied by his spouse. 43-year-old Messiah Tabani is suspected of having ordered the murder of Mr. Tabani's first wife, Lipolelo Tabani, who was shot and killed in front of her home in June 2017 in the country's capital, Maseru. The former First Lady was to return to prison on Friday after the justice annulled her judicial review. 80-year-old Thomas Tabani, who is also accused of having a part in his ex-wife's murder, denies any involvement in her assassination and remains under threat of indictment. On the political front in Malawi, President Peter Mutharika commented for the first time on the justice's cancellation of his victory during last year's presidential election. The president called the Supreme Court's decision a judicial coup d'etat on Friday. On the 8th of May, the Supreme Court unanimously rejected the appeal filed by President Mutharika and the Electoral Commission against the historic ruling of the Constitutional Court annulling the May 2019 election for fraud. The court ordered the holding of a new presidential election scheduled for July, in which the outgoing president and his main opponent, Lazarus Chakwera, will face each other again. In Mali, influential Imam Mahmoud Dicko, opposition parties and a civil society movement led by filmmaker and former Minister of Culture Oumar Sissoko have formed an unprecedented alliance that called citizens on Saturday to demonstrate this week to demand President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita's resignation. The alliance denounces the lack of government response to security challenges such as jihadist attacks, the poor management of economic and social affairs, as well as the recent holding of legislative elections. The newly formed alliance is calling for demonstrations next Friday to demand the destitution of the president and the formation of a new government. In Ivory Coast, supporters of former President Laurent Gbagbo and his former deputy Charles Blé Goudé hold a press conference in Abidjan on Friday after Mr. Gbagbo was authorized under conditions by the International Criminal Court to leave Belgium, where he was under house arrest following his acquittal last year over deadly post-electoral violence. Supporters of the Ivorian Popular Front discussed their leader's return to Ivory Coast, calling for a dialogue with President Alassane Ouattara ahead of October's presidential election.
We appealed to the President of the Republic, Mr. Alassane Ouattara, to his political party, the Unified RHDP, and to the government to seize this opportunity to commit Côte d'Ivoire definitely to the path of true reconciliation and lasting peace. When you're in charge of a country, your greatest wish is that your country is at peace, so anything that can lead to unrest, you avoid, and I think that the Ivorian government will avoid anything that is not good for the stability of our country, for peace.
Supporters of the Pan-African Congress for Justice and People's Equality, founded by Charles Blé Goudé, who will also enjoy a greater freedom of movement, also called for dialogue with the presidency. However, representatives of both political parties did not wish to comment on a return date as the elections approach and chose to maintain the suspense.
We are modestly triumphant. We know that there are many building sites. We are convinced that Charles Blé Goudé and President Laurent Gbagbo will be in Côte d'Ivoire very, very soon. That is the main thing. It could be tomorrow, it could be the day after tomorrow. The day is not what's important, because you even know that we have been calling for the lifting of restrictive measures for a long time. We were convinced that these measures were going to be lifted. Charles Blé Goudé and President Laurent Gbagbo do not have two countries. They are not stateless people. When they are freed, they cannot ask to go elsewhere. They will naturally come to Côte d'Ivoire.
Ils viendront naturellement en Côte d'Ivoire.
Both political leaders were cleared in early 2019 of crimes against humanity, 8 years after Laurent Gbagbo's infamous arrest.
It's so cool.
Finally, in Zimbabwe, the romantic comedy called Cook Off launched this Monday on Netflix, a major first for the country, especially since the movie had a production budget of only $8,000. Zimbabwean leading actress Tendai Chidimma talks about telling her country's stories on an international platform.
Seeing Cook Off on those tabs on the Netflix page, I'm constantly in awe. like and you know my face is right there, and I'm like, how did I end up on Netflix? Because I watch Netflix all the time. I've been watching Netflix for years, so now seeing myself on Netflix, like I have to pinch myself every day. Like, is that really me? Is this really happening? It's exciting. The fact that it's a Zimbabwean story, authentically Zimbabwean. There's so many things in the story that just speak Zimbabwe, and so having the opportunity to be part of as a narrative that is authentically Zimbabwean, that comes from Zimbabwean people who wrote it, who were acting in it, and who were producing it, for me, it was a no-brainer. I was like, I'd love to be part of this project.
I'm disappointed.
I'm afraid you're not cut out.
Cook Off is the story of a single mother struggling to make ends meet, yet passionate about cooking. Without her knowledge, her son and grandmother register her to a cooking reality TV show where she ends up finding love.
Finding a script and a role in which I could play an empowered character who was pursuing what she wanted and going for what she wanted, for me that was a great opportunity for me as an actress, as a Zimbabwean actress, to tell our own stories in a way that inspires other Zimbabweans. It was such a big, fantastic opportunity that we don't usually get. Hopefully more are coming with this Netflix surprise that we have now. So hopefully more opportunities are coming for filmmakers in Zimbabwe to continue working.
Tandage believes all things are possible, and that's her message to the world, especially Africa.
Only thing I managed to do right in this life.
So, we're looking for 16 chefs to take part in the new season of Battle of the Chefs.
You should enter, Mom. I really think you could do it.
This is for professional chefs. I wouldn't stand a chance.
Go big or go home.
Are you ready for this?
I'm gonna kick your butt.
I'm disappointed.
I'm afraid you're not cut out for this.
We all agree.
Only professional chefs have ever made it past the second round.
That's it for today. Thank you for watching Vox News.